We've all heard it, right? Just go silent. Don't text back. Let them feel your absence. And while that sounds empowering, here's the truth. Silence by itself isn't magic. If you're going quiet just to get a reaction, you're not in your power. You're still in the game. Silence only becomes powerful when it's no longer about them. It becomes powerful when it's about you, your healing, your boundaries, your growth. So today, we're going to talk about what actually gives silence its strength, because it's not about disappearing. It's about who you become when you stop making noise for the wrong people. Going silent can feel like taking back control. After someone mistreats you, pulls away, or plays games, choosing not to engage feels like a power move, and sometimes it is. But silence without intention is just avoidance wearing a mask. You're not actually setting a boundary if you're only going quiet because you hope they'll come chasing. That's not strength. That's strategy rooted in pain. It's a reaction, not a decision. And the difference matters, because if your silence depends on what they do next, you're not free, you're still tied to their behavior. Many people go silent as a way to trigger a response. They think, if I stop texting, they'll miss me. Or, if I disappear, they'll finally realize what they lost. And yes, maybe they will notice your absence. But here's the uncomfortable truth. If your silence is performative, if it's rooted in needing to be noticed, you're still giving them power. You're not really gone. You're just waiting in the wings, hoping your absence will pull them back. That's not peace. That's just another form of emotional dependence. Intentional silence, on the other hand, is different. It comes from clarity, not ego. It's not about withholding to manipulate, but about stepping back to protect your energy. You're not trying to teach them a lesson. You're choosing to stop giving your energy to someone who doesn't treat it with care. You're not bitter, you're clear. And clarity is a form of self-respect that doesn't need an audience. It doesn't need validation. It just is. When you go silent with intention, you're not ghosting someone. You're grounding yourself. You're not trying to trigger them. You're trying to return to you. That kind of silence doesn't check the phone every hour. It doesn't stalk their social media. It doesn't spiral into fantasies about them texting at 2 a.m. with some grand apology. It rests, it lets go. And in letting go, it begins to heal. Because intentional silence isn't about absence. It's about presence. Presence with your own thoughts, your boundaries, your healing, your future. It's easy to confuse silence with strength. But real strength isn't just in the quiet, it's in the why behind it. If the silence is making you feel more anxious, more obsessive, more desperate, then it's not power, it's pain trying to look like control. But if the silence is helping you breathe, reflect, sleep better, and feel more centered, then it's a sign you've stepped out of the emotional chaos. You've stopped waiting for them to do the right thing. And you've started doing the right thing for yourself. The most powerful silence doesn't come from wanting to be chased. It comes from realizing you no longer want to be in the race. You're not interested in the highs and lows. You don't need the apology to move forward. You're not waiting for closure. You're becoming it. That's when silence shifts from being a tactic to becoming a truth that says, I'm no longer engaging with confusion. I choose clarity, even if it's quiet. So the next time you go silent, ask yourself, am I trying to be noticed, or am I choosing to notice myself again? That's the difference between avoidance and intention. One keeps you stuck in the cycle, the other sets you free. People often treat silence as the end goal, like going quiet is enough to send a message, gain control, or heal a wound. But silence, by itself, is just a pause. What gives that pause meaning is who you become in it. You can stop texting, you can cut someone off, you can disappear from their world. But if nothing inside you changes, if you're still replaying every moment, still hoping they'll notice, still living in the same pain, then the silence isn't doing anything but stretching out the suffering. Transformation doesn't come from disappearing. It comes from deciding what you're going to do with the space that silence creates. Because silence gives you time, it gives you breathing room, but it's what you do with that space that creates growth. Are you using that silence to reflect on what you tolerated? Are you using it to rebuild your boundaries, to reconnect with your values, to understand your own patterns and why you stayed too long in a situation that didn't value you? Or are you just filling the silence with distraction, scrolling, waiting, checking, obsessing? This is why going silent is not the finish line. It's the starting point. The healing doesn't come just because they can't reach you. It comes when you finally reach yourself, when you use the quiet not to control someone else, but to listen to your own voice again. That voice that got quieter every time you justified their behavior, every time you put their needs above yours, every time you told yourself to hold on a little longer just in case they changed. That inner voice matters, and silence gives you the chance to hear it again. People underestimate how loud the mind can be when the noise of the outside world fades. You think going silent will bring peace, and it can, but only if you're willing to sit in the discomfort first. The thoughts you were avoiding, the pain you were numbing, the questions you didn't want to ask, they all surface in the silence. That's why so many people break it too soon. They don't want to face themselves. They'd rather send a text than sit with the loneliness. But when you stay with it, when you allow yourself to feel without reacting, without chasing, something changes. You start to realize that you don't miss them. You miss the version of you that felt hopeful, that felt connected, that felt safe. And that version of you isn't lost. They're just buried under layers of disappointment and self-doubt. Silence is where you start peeling those layers back. And here's what's powerful. When you emerge from that silence changed, you don't need to announce it. You don't need to send a closure message or wait for a response. You don't even need them to know what you went through. The growth speaks for itself, because you no longer react the same way. You no longer crave their attention. You're no longer drawn to the chaos you once mistook for love. That's how silence becomes power. Not in what it takes away, but in what it gives back to you. So don't just go silent, go inward. Use the space to evolve, to reconnect with the part of you that knows what you deserve and won't settle for less. The most powerful version of you doesn't need to prove anything. They've done the work in private, and that quiet strength, that's what truly speaks volumes. A lot of people use silence like it's a weapon, something sharp, something meant to wound or confuse. They think, if I stop responding, they'll get the message. Or, they'll go silent, and that will teach them. But the moment you use silence to punish, you're not setting a boundary, you're starting a war. And silence used for power games isn't real strength, it's just unspoken conflict. True silence, the kind that actually protects your peace and elevates your life, doesn't come from ego. It comes from self-respect. It's not about making someone suffer. It's about removing yourself from a place where you were already suffering. Boundaries are different from ultimatums. Boundaries aren't about controlling someone else's behavior. They're about defining what you will and won't allow in your life. And silence, when used as a boundary, says, I'm no longer available for confusion, disrespect, or emotional inconsistency. It's a firm, a quiet exit from a space where your value wasn't being honored. Not because you want to be dramatic, but because you've finally accepted that words won't fix what patterns keep breaking. When silence is rooted in ego, it needs to be noticed. It checks to see if they've called. It watches their stories. It hopes for a reaction. But when silence is rooted in a boundary, it's done. It doesn't hover near the phone. It doesn't look back. It's not pretending to be gone. It is gone. And that's the difference. One is a performance. The other is a decision. It takes real courage to go silent as a boundary, because it means accepting that you may never get closure. It means choosing peace over potential. It means stopping the cycle before it eats away at more of your self-esteem. When you use silence as a boundary, you're not waiting to see if they'll change. You've already decided that you're no longer available for the version of them that refuses to. And that's not bitterness. That's maturity. That's you knowing your worth without needing it confirmed by someone else's behavior. People often ask, but won't they just think I don't care if I go silent? The answer is, it doesn't matter. Silence used as a boundary isn't about how it's interpreted. It's about what it does for you. It's about protecting your nervous system, your emotional clarity, your ability to feel calm and grounded again. It's about no longer engaging in conversations that lead nowhere, no longer trying to convince someone to meet you where you already were. When someone makes you feel like you have to beg for the bare minimum, silence becomes an act of self-preservation. And self-preservation isn't selfish, it's sacred. If they don't reach out, if they never apologize, if they never acknowledge your absence, that's okay. Your boundary wasn't a test for them. It was a promise to yourself. You're no longer building relationships on hope alone. You're looking for action, alignment, consistency. You're no longer chasing chemistry. You're choosing compatibility. And if silence is the space you need to step into that next version of yourself, then you don't owe anyone an explanation for choosing it. So when you go silent, let it be a boundary, not a trap. Don't use it to provoke. Use it to protect. Because the people who are meant to be in your life will meet your boundaries with respect, not resistance. And the ones who don't, they'll reveal themselves by how little they notice, or how quickly they disappear. Either way, you win. Because silence isn't about closing the door on someone. It's about opening a new one for yourself. One that leads to peace, self-worth, and people who don't need to be taught how to value you. It's easy to believe that silence is a form of control, that if you step back and stop reaching out, they'll suddenly realize your worth and come running. But if the goal of your silence is to win them back, you're still emotionally tethered to them. You're still in the game. And true power, real, lasting, grounded power, doesn't come from trying to win. It comes from deciding you no longer need to. Because the most powerful silence isn't about being chased. It's about letting go of the need to be chosen by someone who kept you guessing. You don't win by being quiet. You win by letting go of the narrative that told you this person was the answer to your happiness. You win by no longer seeing the relationship as a prize and yourself as the one trying to earn it. That's the quiet shift most people don't talk about. The moment when your silence isn't passive, it's intentional. You stop feeding a dynamic that drained you. You stop trying to be understood by someone who never listened. You stop proving, explaining, convincing. You simply stop. Letting go isn't weakness. It's strength disguised as surrender. It's saying, I may still love you. I may still feel this hurt. But I love myself more than I love staying stuck in this loop. That's the moment things begin to change. Not because they come back, but because you do. You come back to your peace, your dignity, your sense of what's healthy and what's not. You stop asking, will they come around? And start asking, what version of me would accept this? And when the answer is, not this one, you walk away. This kind of letting go is subtle. No goodbye, no dramatic exit. Just space, just stillness, just less and less energy poured into someone who didn't hold it with care. And they'll feel it. They may not say it, they may not reach out, but they'll feel the shift because they were used to your presence, your effort, your investment. And now they're left with the echo of everything they once had access to. But by the time they realize what they lost, it won't matter because the person who used to be available for the bare minimum no longer exists. You don't let go to make a point. You let go because hanging on was costing you too much. Your joy, your peace, your confidence. It was all being chipped away every time you accepted less than you deserved. And at some point, you got tired of trying to be okay with almost enough, almost committed, almost clear. That exhaustion, that's your intuition waking up. And it's telling Yug, this isn't love, it's longing. This isn't connection, it's attachment. And you're finally ready to step out of it. Letting go doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care deeply, but you're no longer willing to betray yourself in the process. You still feel, you still remember, but you also choose to move forward. You don't wait for their apology to heal. You don't wait for them to understand what they had, because you've stopped looking back for closure and started creating your own, not with their help, but with your own two hands. And that's what turns silence into freedom, not the reaction it provokes, but the release it creates. The freedom to stop hoping, to stop replaying, to stop romanticizing a connection that left you empty. You don't need to be missed to matter. You don't need to be pursued to feel worthy. You let go, not because you gave up, but because you finally remembered who you are. Going silent isn't inherently powerful. It's what happens in that silence that defines its impact. If your mind is still racing, your heart is still stuck on what they're doing, and your day still revolves around checking for a sign from them, then you haven't gone silent, you've just gone still. And there's a big difference. Silence should be a sanctuary, a place where you return to yourself, not a waiting room where you count the minutes until they reach out. If your silence leads to obsession instead of peace, then it's not healing you. It's holding you hostage. You can block them, mute them, delete their number. But if you're still replaying conversations, stalking their social media from another account, or fantasizing about the moment they regret losing you haven't let go, you've just made the silence louder. That noise inside your head, that's what needs attention. Because it's easy to think that by going quiet, you're doing the work. But real silence isn't just the absence of communication with them. It's the presence of reconnection with yourself. True silence invites you inward. It slows things down long enough for you to hear what your own voice is saying beneath the anxiety and the noise. It's where you notice what you were settling for, where you start to ask deeper questions. Why did I stay so long in something that hurt? What was I trying to fix? What did I believe about love that made me accept less than I deserved? These are the questions that matter, not will they come back? Or what are they thinking? Because those questions keep your focus on them. And silence isn't supposed to lead you further away from them. It's supposed to bring you home to yourself. When you're really healing, silence becomes spacious. It becomes a break from emotional chaos. It becomes the place where you stop defining your worth by someone else's ability to see it. But that only happens if you're willing to do the uncomfortable work. The work of facing the void instead of running from it. The work of sitting with the ache of being alone without trying to numb it with distractions. The work of learning how to feel your feelings without making them someone else's responsibility. It's a subtle kind of power, this kind of silence, because there's no performance in it, no one to impress, no one watching. It's just you being honest with yourself. It's you having the courage to admit what hurt, what you ignored, and what you're not willing to repeat. And that inner clarity becomes the foundation for everything that comes next. Because healing doesn't mean you forget the past. It means you remember it clearly enough to know you never want to go back. Eventually, you start to notice the shift. You wake up and realize you haven't thought about them yet. You scroll through your phone and don't feel the urge to check on them. You catch yourself laughing more, sleeping better, creating again. And it doesn't happen all at once, but it does happen. And when it does, that's how you know your silence has served you. Not because they came back, not because they missed you, but because you finally stopped needing them to. That's the goal. Not to be silent and sad, but to be silent and still. Silent and strong, silent and rebuilding. Because that silence, when used the right way, it becomes the space where you rise. Not in response to them, but in remembrance of you. Silence can feel like a break, like the world is finally quiet enough for you to catch your breath. But if all you do in that quiet is sit and wait, nothing changes. Time passes, but healing doesn't happen on its own. You don't grow just because you've stopped talking to them. You grow because of what you do in that silence. You grow because you start showing up for yourself in ways you never did while you were focused on showing up for them. That's when silence becomes something more than absence. It becomes fuel. It becomes direction. Because silence that isn't followed by action is just a pause. Silence followed by purpose is a reset. You can disappear from someone's life, but if you're still emotionally frozen, replaying old memories, checking their social media, and letting them live in your head rent-free, the silence hasn't helped you. It's only trapped you in a quiet loop. That's not transformation. That's just time passing while nothing inside really moves forward. You don't need more silence. You need movement. You need to choose yourself in ways that are visible to you even if no one else sees them. Whether that means therapy, journaling, working out, or building something new, or finally investing in the parts of your life that had nothing to do with them. Those actions are what make the silence sacred instead of hollow. There's a difference between using silence to escape and using it to evolve. When you use silence to escape, you avoid. You numb out. You fantasize about their return. You use your quiet as a placeholder until they come back. But when you use silence to evolve, you change. You stop looking at your phone for them and start looking in the mirror for you. You stop chasing answers and start building your next chapter. You don't wait to be saved. You become your own safety. And slowly, the person who used to need them so badly becomes the person who is grounded with or without them. Action doesn't have to be big. It just has to be real. It can be as simple as waking up earlier to journal instead of checking your notifications, saying no to the temptation to send a just checking in message, choosing to speak your truth even if your voice shakes, or choosing silence from a place of peace, not punishment. Each time you choose a version of yourself that no longer begs for the bare minimum, you're writing a new story. And that story is louder than any text, louder than any conversation. It's the kind of message they don't need to hear. You feel it, and that's enough. The truth is, most people don't expect you to do anything in the silence. They think you'll sulk, wait, wonder, stay stuck. They expect you to hover just out of reach, emotionally still available if they ever decide to come back. But when silence is followed by real growth, it disrupts the dynamic completely. Because now, when they circle back, they don't recognize you. You're not bitter, but you're different. You're not angry, but you're unavailable in all the ways that once made you easy to access. That's not revenge. That's evolution. Silence followed by action creates a new reality, one that no longer revolves around what someone else does or doesn't do. You stop living reactively and start moving with intention. You stop responding to every signal and start listening to your own. And in that space, in that quiet where you once felt empty, you now feel full. Not because they came back, but because you did. And that's the version of you who no longer needs noise to feel seen. You're too busy building a life that speaks for itself. Silence isn't the victory. It's the doorway. It's the space that invites you to stop reaching outward and start reaching inward. But what gives that silence meaning isn't who notices, it's what you do with it. You don't heal by disappearing. You heal by choosing yourself again and again, in the quiet moments when no one is watching. And in time, you stop needing them to reach out, to apologize, to miss you. Because you've created something more meaningful than their regret, your own peace, your own strength, your own life. Going silent isn't enough, but becoming someone who no longer needs to be loud to be powerful. That's everything.